not be as sexy, but as somebody just pointed out to me, the budget's actually super important, and so we're really glad that you all are here for the conversation tonight. So we will get started with our mantra. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. As you may have heard by now, my colleagues and I have a motto that we frequently quote as we work to ensure that our students are prepared for life. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. That motto is the key element to our governance structure. Student outcomes focused governance, or SOFG for short. This sentiment calls on all of us in education to look honestly at whether we prioritize student outcomes in every decision we make, from the boardroom to the classroom. You're up.
When the Board of Education shifted to the student outcomes focused governance model more than a year ago, we laid the groundwork for what we expect will be a transformative period at APS. Now, everything the district undertakes should be aligned to improving student outcomes. This includes the work of the superintendent, the evaluation of the superintendent, the budgets for the district, as well as the schools and the legislative agenda. Everything must align to improving student outcomes. It's been a multifaceted process that has you, our community, at its heart. To set the goals and the guardrails, we needed to know the community's vision for what they want our students to know and be able to do, and the values that are critical to that success and cannot be violated. So we asked you. We went out to you all, to the community, and listened to what you said, and then we created the goals and the guardrails with your voice guiding the entire process. Did any of you participate in that effort, by the way? We have a few. The board member back there does not count, but the rest of you do. How many of you filled out surveys in this effort? Oh, good, good. So thank you. Thank you for your participation, and thank you again for being here tonight.
And sorry, I was so excited to start talking about the budget that I forgot to announce who we are. So I am board member Courtney Jackson. I represent District 7. My co-leader tonight is Josefina Dominguez. She represents District 6. And then up here we have our budget team. We have Renette Apodaca, who is the Chief Financial Officer for APS. And we have Rosalinda Montoya, who is our budget queen, budget executive director, or queen. We also have other board members in the audience tonight who I'd like to point out. We have board member Ronalda Tomorito. We have board member Heather Benavides, board member Crystal Tapia Romero, and board president Danielle Gonzalez is around here somewhere. She's wearing bright pink, so that's who you can point out. And then I'd also like to point out we have a former board member in the audience, former board member Barb Peterson. So thank you all for coming tonight. So these are our goals and our guardrails that resulted from our extensive community listening sessions. As you can see, we learned that the community wants APS to focus on literacy, math, post-secondary readiness, and the skills, habits, and mindsets that lead to life success. These are the vision of what our community wants our students to know and be able to do. We also learned that you expect equity, support, high-quality curriculum and instruction, voice and engagement, and support for our staff. These are the values that guard every decision we and the superintendent make.
SMART goals. They mean S for specific, students identified in Yazzie, Martinez plus African Americans. They're measurable, proficiency rates, credits, evidence-based measures, attainable, evidence-based, aligned tools, result-focused, monthly progress monitoring sessions. If you haven't tuned in, those are very enlightening. I invite you to do so. Time-bound. We have a 5-year time span for our goals and guardrails. In order to make sure we meet the goals while staying within the guardrails, we needed to have goals that were SMART. To do this, we created this list. This is the community plan for APS. It is your plan. And it is the first time that APS has put forth such a robust plan for our students with extensive community input and involvement. And it's our commitment to remain robustly engaged with our community. Thank you. Now we would like to turn the presentation over to the budget team because they're the stars of the evening.
Thank you. I'm gonna put this up here. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. So good evening. Again, my name is Renee Apodaca. This is Rosalinda Montoya. We also have in the audience some members of the finance team. So we have Renee Holmes, we have Mahela Marin, and Julianne Hicks, and we have the incoming superintendent, Dr. Gabriela Blakey. So thank you for being here. Thank you to the board. Thank you for attending this budget conversation. So I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about the APS budget. So the APS budget is a large budget. The current budget that APS is operating is $2.2 billion, with a B, billion. I think that's a net worth of Taylor Swift I heard this morning on the radio. So that's how big it is. The FY25 budget, the one we're going to be working on for next school year, is estimated at $1.9 billion. So you might ask yourself, where is this money coming from? APS receives funding from various sources: federal grants, state appropriations, we sell general obligation bonds, direct levies, mill levies, impact aid funds, which are payments in lieu of taxes, and other governments in the form of grants. We'll get some grant money from the city, the county, and along with getting this funding comes with strings. I always tell folks, we don't just get it and they say, go for it. No, it comes with strings. And what do I mean by that is that these funds are earmarked for specific purposes. And APS must use the funds as earmarked or as identified. So something to remember is that in finance, it is very compliance driven. Whether it be payroll and the proper way to report payroll taxes, or accounting and the proper way to book expenditures or resources per general accepting accounting principles, or even awarding a vendor contract that has to be per the procurement code. Just like that, budget is very compliance driven because we have to make sure that we use the funds for the specific purpose. And we work very hard to ensure that we align to the APS goals, honoring the APS guardrails, supporting the strategic plan. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So transportation funds. We can use transportation funds for students to and from school. So we can pay for buses, drivers, fuel, but we can't use it to get extra teachers. We can't use it for art or PE, anything like that. It has to be used in that manner. Food and nutrition funds. Any guesses what we can use that for? It's used for meals for the students, for the children. So we can use it for breakfast, lunch, snacks, cafeteria staff, equipment. Again, we can't buy more teachers. We can't buy PE, art. We have to use it in that manner. And then there's capital funds. And capital funds we bring into the district in different methods. One of them is the mill levy, or SB 9. This was just approved in November. You might have heard about it. And we can use that for school facilities, maintenance, security, and other items. But again, we have to use it for that purpose. We also get direct legislative appropriations. The legislature just wrapped up, and we could have gotten, I'm not 100% sure, but we could have gotten appropriations for like a shade structure, playground equipment, maybe a new track. But again, we have to use it for those reasons. And we also sell general obligation bonds. Those have to be voter approved, and we have to identify the projects that we're going to be using. Again, very specific. And then we get to our operational funds. These are the funds that are allocated from the state, and the state uses the State Equalization Guarantee Formula, or the SEG. And this SEG is a formula that identifies the amount of money that a state guarantees to a district so it can provide educational services to students. And guess what? 90% of the SEG goes to labor. That's how we pay for our principals, our teachers, our EAs, our custodians, security. 90% is salaries. We also have other factors that affect the budget, external factors, so factors that are not in our control. One of them is enrollment. You know, it's no secret that enrollment has been decreasing at APS, but guess what? It's been decreasing nationwide. The birth rates are down, and there's a lot of mobility. Families move around. You know, back in the day, like when I was young, families would stay somewhere. They would move somewhere, they'd build their roots, all of the children would go to the schools. Now, families move around and take their kids with them and go to different schools. Economic factors. The big one, inflation. You know, just like all of you have had to deal with inflation, so does the district. Also, market conditions. You know, a lot of market conditions are volatile. Supply chain issues. Those are all external factors that affect our budget. Also, legislative. You know, like I mentioned, the legislature just wrapped up, and guess what? There was a 3% increase for all staff. We have to put that in our budget. Also, we've had where the legislative might pass like the number of days of instruction or the number of hours of instruction. Those too affect our budget. We could have political external factors. You know, if we have changes in government, in the state government, in the national government, that could affect us. And then this year, we have federal funding that we received during the pandemic that is affecting us. So you heard me say we had a $2.2 billion and now it's 1.9 billion. The reason is because of these federal funds that are expiring. And we also must maintain a 5% fund balance. That is the minimum amount that we have to maintain. So you can see with all of these specific earmarks and purposes and minimum balance and external factors, it's a complicated budget. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the budget queen, and she can tell you a little bit more about it. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, Renette. I like that title, Budget Queen. I am the Rosalinda Montoya, the Executive Director of Budget and Grants Management. And like she mentioned, a few of my team are here tonight to help with any questions you may have. So as Renette mentioned, the budget that we are currently using is a $2.2 billion budget. But next year, it's going to go down because of those ESSER funds that will be going away. So I have a breakdown that's up there right now that kind of shows how that 1.9 billion, the types of funds that it is. We're going to have 904.6 million in operational funds. We're 473.7 in capital funds, 234 around from federal, state, and local grants, 191 million for debt service, 44.8 million for food services, 20.9 million for transportation, 18.9 million for activity funds, 8.7 for our enterprise funds, 2.5 for athletics, and here it says 0.3 million for instructional materials. We had a fund that was dedicated strictly to instructional materials. This is just the remainder of that. Right now it has moved into operational funds. So most of the instructional materials is within that operational funds, that first 904.6 million. So I'm going to speak a little bit about what all those different funds are. So beginning with operational, this money is used to pay for our day-to-day expenses, everything from employees' salaries and benefits. It pays for utilities, and it pays for 142 schools and other APS buildings. Oops, that's for, yeah, I got this mixed up. It's just for our day-to-day employee salaries and benefits mostly. And then we go to, and that funding is the SEG that she had mentioned, the State Equalization Guarantee. And 98% of those funds that we use for operational comes from the state. So next is the capital funds. So like Renette mentioned, also voters approved property taxes to pay for new school construction, renovations, repairs, and technology. By law, these funds cannot be used to cover operational costs like teacher salaries or benefits. Next is grants. APS receives federal, state, city, and private grants that have specialized uses. They sometimes allow payment of salaries and benefits, but are specific to each grant. Grants have expiration dates, like our ESSER funds that we just spoke about. The ESSER funds were $242 million that we had been able to use in the last few years that were our COVID relief funds. And those are due to expire at the end of this fiscal year. So that's why you see that main difference of the budget going down is mostly because of the federal funds that are going away. Then we have food services. Of course, food services is operated under a federally funded National School Lunch Act, Child Nutrition Act, and the National School Breakfast Act. They will also receive some state funds from the Universal Free Meals Program. Then transportation funds, the state provides funding for transportation. These funds cover costs for buses and contractors to provide school bus transportation for students. That's pretty self-explanatory, as is instructional materials. The state provides funding for textbooks and other instructional materials. These funds are in the operational budget. And one big thing that's, I think, is very important to note is 80% of our budget goes to schools. So, and I have a graph here that kind of breaks down these proportions. So 66%, the largest in that lighter blue of APS budget, goes directly to the classroom, paying for teacher and educational assistant salaries and benefits. The next orange part goes to counselors. The 11% goes to counselors, nurses, and health assistants. And this is the breakdown of the operational funds, just to reiterate that part. It's just the operational funds portion. You'll see the first three, the direct instruction, student support, and instructional support, make up that 80% that I spoke about of the operational budget. So what is direct instruction? Direct instruction is the teachers, educational assistants, and professional development needed. Student support are, again, the counselors, nurses, occupational therapists, audiologists, diagnosticians, speech therapists, and health assistants. And then instructional support in the gray, the 4%, are, that goes to librarians, media specialists, and library assistants. Then the 0.5 is central administration. That is the superintendent, associate superintendents, and the APS Board of Education offices. Then that 6%, that's school administration. That includes principals and assistant principals at all schools. So then that 3% is the central services. And what central services is human resources, information technology, accounting, budgeting, accounts payable, purchasing, and grants. And then the 11%, that final little piece of the pie, it goes to maintenance and operations. And this is for building maintenance, upkeep of grounds, and the equipment needed, plus also the utilities. And that completes the breakdown of the budget and kind of exactly where it goes to. And now I'll send it back on over to Renette.
If you get a chance to pick up this pamphlet, I don't know if you've seen them before, but there's a really informative page in here about the budget, and it breaks down the resources and how they're used. We also have this information on our budget website, so if you're ever curious, this is a very good document. And as you can imagine, as we're putting the budget together, we have trade-offs. You know, there are different priorities, there are different requests, there are different issues, and we get a set of wants and needs, and then we have to be able to balance, because we have to, by law, have a balanced budget. So we actually have an exercise that we want all of you to participate in, and it kind of shows you what the budget team and what the district actually goes through. We work with two different consultants. One of them is Edunomics, and they are a finance education, and we went through their classes and were able to get a certificate on school finance. And then we also work with ERS, which is Educational Resource Strategies, and they help us to see the best way that we can use our resources. And actually, you'll hear more about them and the work they're doing as they're wrapping up. So you'll hear more about them in April and May. But they have a similar game that you can, or exercise that, like I said, helps you kind of understand what budget has to go through, what the district has to go through. So we encourage you to get in teams of five, and you'll get a purple card, which gives you a role, because we are always juggling the requests from, of course, parents, from principals, from teachers, from finance, from academics. So you're going to get a role, and that's kind of what your interest is. And then we have a scenario here where we're telling you, you have this amount of money. Here's some unfunded programs that are requests, but if you fund them, here's some of the modifications that have to take place to be able to fund this. So we, like I said, it's just an exercise, but I think it'll give you a really good idea of the different requests, the different wants, the different needs, and some of the juggling that we have to do to try to fund programs and not do too many modifications. So,
Okay. So I think we have some board members are ready and available to kind of help us pass out the materials. So if you guys, while we are getting that together, if you can kind of group yourselves into groups of 5, we'll come around to you and hand out the documents that you need to play the fun budget game.
So are you guiding up here?
no, we'll go up there and help them.
So, except somebody needs to say how to use it. So is that you guys?
Sure,
Okay,
we can do that. So,
and that's the,
yeah. So make sure and read the exercise. We have a scenario, and then we have the different roles. But the scenario is basically that there are some funds expiring, 25 million, and there are some unfunded programs that people would really want to keep. But if we keep these, then we have to look at the modifications.
about 5 more minutes.
Thank you. I should have warned you.
coming.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up. And while you guys are wrapping up your conversation, just so that we can have maybe a really good conversation about this, if you guys could maybe everybody move up here kind of closer to the front and kind of make a circle so that we can have some really good conversation amongst ourselves. It also makes it easier for us to pass the microphones around. But wrap up and kind of, yeah, create a circle. So we need to kind of stay. There's a group in the back that is really making a lot of trade-offs. All right, I think we are there. So as we come back together, the purpose of us meeting like this is we, as not only as board members but as a budget team, are really interested to hear what your aha moments were as you were creating this budget. And one thing that it's really important to point out, this is all pretend, what you guys were just doing. These are not the actual budget decisions that we have to make. This was just kind of a mental exercise. So I think kind of what we're gonna do, we've got 2 board members with microphones, and we will ask that you speak into the microphone because this is being live streamed, so we want the people at home to hear what some of your aha moments were as well. So one of the first questions is, what challenges did you have while you were making financial decisions?
A lot of us had more questions than we had answers. We were like, so we want to know exactly what enrollment is if we're going to shut down schools, and we want to know, you know, the effectiveness of SEL, and we want to know, like, we wanted to know all of these things. And so it was hard to make a decision based off of not knowing that. So that's one thing that we struggled with.
I'm hearing agreement, okay. The effectiveness of programs is one thing you wanted to kind of know a little bit more about, okay. What other struggles, what other challenges did you find?
Hi there. So I honestly didn't really have challenges or struggles or an aha moment. Like, it's very clear that What you all need to do with the budget is extremely complicated and difficult, and trade-offs need to be made. But it's not really super valuable to me as a parent to be put in a fake way into that role. Like, I want to know the real numbers, the real programs. I want to know what's getting cut. That's why I'm here.
So was it, the point of the game, right, was to be presented with a scenario where you had to fit everything into $25 million. And did you find that was hard? Like, you wanted, no, you didn't, it wasn't hard. Okay, no, it wasn't hard. Okay, so that was a challenge. Yeah, yeah.
So I want to speak on that as well a little bit. Largely, there's a couple of things in the design of this little exercise we did is not designed to actually help us understand the budget, but more so to build sympathy towards the budget makers, to see that, oh, we have to pick and choose which dog we're going to shoot in order to survive, And it really shouldn't be like that. I mean, just from this example, the one-to-one computing should never have been a pandemic expense that needed to be a system that is recurring, constantly funded like they do in Santa Fe, who spends less per capita on child than we do. They have a very robust technology program that helped them really mitigate a lot of the learning loss they had during COVID. And these are decisions that should have been made a decade ago, that other school districts in other cities and other states have done decades ago. And so to make it seem like we have to choose between closing down neighborhood schools or having one-to-one computing is very disrespectful to how districts should be run, as well as the work that other districts run across the country have put into it. In particular, I don't quite understand why every single time we talk about budget, even in this exercise, it's always about, which dog do we shoot? How do we figure this out with the bare bones money that we're making, and not why aren't we angry at the state for not providing us enough funding? Why aren't we actually looking at the rights of the students and ensuring that the state adequately funds our district? Why aren't we holding our teachers, our principals, our systems accountable for whether or not that money is spent? How do we ensure that our teachers are advocating for good instructional materials, good curriculum? How are we not looking at curriculum as an opportunity to not only cut down on the stress, social, emotional services in the classroom by making the curriculum less terrible for our students? There are so many different money-making opportunities that we have in simple education reform, and a lot of the stuff that we're spending and a lot of the stuff that was in this exercise are things that can be mitigated without taking away services from our students, or without hiring freezes, or without cutting down on teacher salaries, when we're in an age where we need to be bolstering these things, where we need more teachers now more than ever.
Thank you. So I think you kind of answered the next question of what are some of the must-haves that you were willing to give up, trade, or modify. And yes, go ahead.
Yeah, he was actually at the very end, he kind of hit on it, but I was like, this is a bigger issue than what APS, they have to make tough decisions. I think we all understand that. And there has to be, the numbers have to add up. At the end of the day, the numbers have to add up. But it's a lot that's out of our control. So this is my first time coming here. And I was just curious kind of to be here, but I'm realizing that it's something in Santa Fe that needs to be addressed as a teacher myself, to not have the proper curriculum and instruction, the stuff I need to be able to do my job is really frustrating for me day to day. And so, but I think it's a bigger problem than what we have. And I really do think that, I think the United States in general likes to throw money at issues. And I'm not sure how many issues they solve by throwing money, and where does the money go, and how is it used in a way that helps and that produces results, right? Because we want results. We want our kids to know how to read, write, do math, and problem solve. And so for me, that was like, oh, maybe I don't need to be here. not that I don't mind being here, but I'm like, maybe I need to be writing more people in Santa Fe, or maybe I need to be doing something else on top of that. So that way we can be successful and not feel like we're picking the dog, which one we're gonna shoot and which one we're gonna keep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I actually came here with almost the exact same questions. In particular, just kind of an example, I understand that the state is requiring teachers around the state to take the letters program in structured literacy, which I think is good. I mean, I'm not a teacher, but I went online to try and learn more about it, and it was extremely difficult. The state is certainly not being transparent, but I wanted to know, how is that working with APS? What teachers from APS are doing it, number one. But number two, is it really true that those teachers have to pay the fee for that class themselves, and they have to do it on their own time? And we're not paying them to spend the time they do that? And I see that that's more of a state problem, just like these other people are saying. But what is the relationship? How is that working between APS and the legislature and the state board? And how do you get some clarity about how APS is working just with that one particular program? So thank you both for bringing those issues up, because that was really a big concern I came here with.
So I think one theme that I'm getting is more specifics. And one thing that I do want to point out, this is our first time doing this presentation, and we're trying our best to have better community conversations, right? To have better two-way conversations. And so we're all taking notes, and the next time we do this presentation, maybe we'll come with more specifics. But because this is our first time, we thought it would be beneficial to give an overview of how the budget is put together, just on a real top level discussion. Now, one thing is we've worked time into this that we'll have parking lot, is that what it's called? Parking lot discussions. So if anybody has very particular questions about the budget, that's why we have our experts here to answer those questions. So are there any other, and before I move on, we are getting to the budget reality. So we're going to continue this conversation, but were there any other must-haves that you felt and you needed to keep, or do we just kind of want to move on to as much specifics as we have? I'm getting to move on. And yes, ma'am.
I'll just say for our group, and I probably don't need a microphone, just so they can
that we were really trying to look at it from the point of view of the goals and so on, in terms of like professional development and computers, as compared to hiring freezes, which sound hard, but that we really did look at that through that lens of those goals. But it
Music
made
to
for
my
some hard
ears.
choices.
Okay. Anybody? No? Okay, move on. Okay, budget team, back to you.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you guys for that input. Okay, so the next slide here is just our budget realities. The emerging issues, of course, are the ESSER funds, or the grant, the $242 million that's expiring this year, the student enrollment decline, inflation, and then, of course, the restricted funds of capital funds, federal money, transportation buses. But this next one, I think, will answer some of your questions. And we're not at the point where we have already built the budget, just so you know. That's why this is the start. This is the planning of the budget. We just had the legislative session end, and so that is kind of like what guides us, right? What increases are we having? We're getting a 3% increase for all salaries. We're just in the planning stages, and this meeting was really meant to take some of your input to help us with that planning. And of course, we thought that by giving you the different types of funding and all that kind of stuff, that would be able to help you give some informative, input or whatever. But I know a lot of you already know a lot of this, but we have to assume that there's all types of individuals here, right? Some that know the budgets very well, they know the funding, they know restricted funding, operational, all the different types of funding for the budgets, but a lot of people are new to this, and we want to make sure we help everyone understand. So our budget calendar, we are just finishing the legislative session, right? So that's all that we know that is firm for the budget, right, at this moment. And so now in March, we send out budget templates to all the schools, and the principals right now are working on their budgets for their individual schools. There's 142 schools, so it's a lot of stuff that we have already sent out. And like I said, the principals and their teams are working on the budget. They will return that to us. We'll know we'll get all of those together, start to see what that dollar amount is, and it's going to be, we assume, about 80% of our budget will be taken up there. On March 1st, for all the departments, we will send out those same templates for the departments to build their budgets. That's, like all the ones I mentioned, HR, we have to build a budget, finance builds a budget. All the department areas will be doing that. Then we receive that back. So then I put all those two together, and then I will have a budget, right? We'll see, do we have any money to play with? If we do, what is the input we've received? Then we start doing kind of what you did in the game, kind of seeing, okay, what are the priorities? And of course, all departments, all schools, they will give us their priorities, and they will differ. I will let you know. They will all be different. And so we have a budget steering committee that is not just myself. I don't make all these decisions by myself or my team. We have a committee that kind of will go over all this stuff and helps us really, everybody kind of says why programs, because I'm not an expert in program. I'm a numbers person. But we have tons of very smart individuals that know their area just as well as I know budgeting. And so we all get together and we come up with the budget. And so it is very important that you guys do give feedback on this budget, and that's why we were hoping that this game would be interesting. But so for FY25 and beyond, we will be sure that we align to the board's goals. We will be honoring the guardrails and also supporting the strategic plan that you guys have probably already saw with some of the board members, the Emerging Stronger. Is that right? and what is our North Star? Of course, student outcomes. And we actually, part of the strategic plan, because we're doing lots of things to educate ourselves and do the best that we can. So we're looking at a budget methodology to be more aligned to student outcomes. And so that's one of the things, and it is part of the strategic plan. And then, just as a reminder that we are aligning the budget to the goals. This was this current budget's alignment, because we haven't, like I said, we haven't received anything back yet from the departments and the schools. So this alignment is for this current year. And this is the percentages that the principals, when they sent back budgets to us aligned to this, in this percentage to the goals. So I think, oops, oh,
When you said you gave the schools the templates and you're going to give the departments the templates, was that giving them their estimated allocations, or were they just telling you what they wanted?
that's giving them, what we do is we look at the schools by enrollment, each one, and then, so that does kind of the allocations for the main stuff. Then there's other funds in there, at-risk funds. There's a lot of other funds that they can look and see how are they gonna build their budget. So then they get to kind of make their own priorities of how they're gonna use that.
Do you
additional
guys get
funding.
any wiggle room at all with the at-risk funds? Because the one thing I really want to advocate for here is the students who have so many severe adverse childhood experiences, it's not the same. And for them to get the same number of adults per student, it's really not working.
Yeah, and
Is
they
that an
don't.
area that you guys
No,
have?
the operational is just the basic foundation. Then on top of all that stuff, we have Title I, we have all the additional funds that those go to additional FTEs, additional stuff. I'm just speaking about the foundational operational funds. So there is like on top of, there's additional funding for, different, like I said, there's the special education funds, there's the at-risk, and then there's for, English learners.
Yeah.
Lots of different funding that gets put on
And the
top of.
state made some changes with at-risk, right? Does that help us at all this year? It's okay if you don't have it on hand, but
My expert
can ask
here.
after.
She can get with you on that.
okay, thank you.
I kind of want to follow up on the at-risk funding question, because one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of the attendance zones are structured to keep Title I funds within specific schools. For example, Highland High School only goes about 4 blocks west for its attendance zone, making it to where there are intersections between Highland High School and Albuquerque High School, where if you live within this tiny sliver between them, you're not legally allowed to get transportation to the school closest to you. And as far as I can tell, the only reason why that is because Highland has an extremely high percentage of Title I students. The last time I looked at it, it said 100%. And so I'm wondering what, if any, is there any sort of safeguards to prevent this type of redlining to keep students that are impoverished in impoverished schools, or to at least not respect the neighborhoods that are around these schools that are causing this. And it seems to me that this is a budgetary concern and not necessarily an equity concern. On top of that, I'm wondering if, how is it that we have these redlining procedures in place and all these Title I fundings, but we still have schools that produce brown water from the faucets? I was just at, I was at Garfield Middle School. I think it was Garfield. But they had, their orchestra class had to duct tape sponges to their violins instead of having shoulder carriers. There was music stands that didn't function that they had to duct tape together to figure out to get it to work for them. There was a lot of places that do not function as facilities, but have high Title I funding. Where is that funding going? Especially if they're also facing the same, teacher student disparities as other schools. Why do we have all this redlining but also have to deal with all these poor facilities?
Sure. Well, like I had kind of mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, is when we find issues like that, it's good that you bring it to our attention, so that way we can find the proper funding that should be used in those instances. Because, you were talking about Title I and the instruments, and they may or may not be able to use that funds. I see Mahela say no, but we can try to identify the funds that can. I think, and this is definitely something that I will mention at the beginning of the next meeting, is yes, this is a meeting to try to get feedback because we are still building the budget. You know, the governor hasn't signed the budget yet, so we're waiting to see what the final budget is. We did our budget call to be able to get the needs from the school to see what that looks like. Also, we are working with our budget steering committee and with the officials in APS, again, to get those priorities, to make sure we align to the goals and the guardrails. So this is the place that we are able to get that feedback. And I really encourage all of you to watch our board meetings, to participate in our board meetings as we go forward, because we will be reporting on the budget. We will be showing what the actual numbers are and where the expenditures are going and what is going to be changing, what is going to be increasing, what is going to be decreasing. But without getting those final numbers, right now, it would just be a projection. And we want to give you the actual. So please, please tune in. And as we start finalizing everything, we'll be able to answer those questions. But right now, we do want to get your feedback because, like I said, we do get specific funds. And if there's any funding that we are able to utilize, we want to be able to do those trade-offs and be able to know what the priorities are for our parents and our community. So please, please give us that feedback.
To follow up, there's a couple things I'm concerned with. Was mainly that, like, in 2019, when I ran for school board, a lot of the concerns that I'm bringing up were also brought up to those board members. None of those board members are currently on the board anymore, but it concerns me that within those 4-year time that none of that got to you to where you're at the point where you can answer this question offhand. These are questions that have been asked for years, and so I'm concerned that there's not really going to be a change in culture from either these meetings or even this conversation.
Okay. Just to let you know that I got in this role 18 months, so I apologize that I'm not familiar with your request.
Yeah, and
that far back.
And that's fine, and that's more of a reflection of APS's poor transition when it comes to admin positions. To point I have another question about school budgets, because Van Buren has a guitar program that is pulled exclusively from the discretionary fund and not from arts and music, which to me is a big concern, especially since we have a focus on culturally relevant and inclusive education, and to me that would be very good for the Hispanic community. And so I'm wondering if there is some kind of system when schools give their budgets back to you, is there an ask from them? Like, are you giving them the opportunity or space to determine what their deficit in budget would be? Like, if rather than having them pick and choose, is there a system in place where schools can tell you how much money they would need to adequately run all of their services and programs?
I wonder if showing parents what the allocation sheet looks like in the future might be helpful.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I kind of have a fundamental question. I'm a finance and an accountant, and obviously it's something I do every year is budgets and so on. Knowing in effect that there's a different strategy that the school is trying to compile. My question to you is, do we ever look at, from a standpoint of other school districts around the country, as to how monies are being spent that sets at least a goal on really what priorities are, that in effect would give you a bit of an idea? Because there's been a lot of things in the news that there's too much administrative cost that's being done, and I can't say whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. But from a standpoint of being able to look from a comparison standpoint about where that operational money is going, that in effect is, allowing you to be able to say, we're putting money where in effect it's going to make a huge difference. Just curious if that's something that has been considered.
Yes, thank you for that question. And I mentioned earlier that we are working with a consultant, Education Resource Strategies, and exactly what you're saying is what we've been working with the consultant. They have done a deep dive into our resources and compared us to districts similar to us, similar size, similar demographics, and they're independent, and one of the things that I can tell you is our admin cost. I know it's definitely something that has been brought up that says that our admin cost is higher. Actually, when they compared us to other districts, ours is 4%, is an average of 4%. Other districts were closer to 10% and 8%. And also, the LFC did an independent study on our program in 2021, I believe, or 2022. They also found the same thing, that our admin costs were 4%. So we have seen that, the state have seen that, and now an independent consultant has seen that. So yes, you're spot on. We have been working with Economics and with Education Resource for that exact thing, where we're looking at our peers and we're able to see best practices and strategies. So thank you for that question. Yes, thank you so much. I agree.
Yeah, and it's up here on this operational breakdown. If you see the green, the 3%, it's labeled central services, but central services in the definitions is the, HR administrative. And if you add the 0.5 of the central administration together, it's like 3.5. So it is quite low comparative to most places that are at about 10%.
So I'm going to. We have one more. Oh, one more. Okay.
I'd like to answer the question about, can schools ask for more money? So I think that was your question, the gentleman right here. So I didn't think that was your question. I thought your question was, is there a vehicle for them to tell us how much they would actually need? So, okay. So the answer is no. Sorry.
We have one more. And that's going to be our last question, and I will ask, there it is, the feedback QR code is up. If you would please use it to provide more feedback.
Hi there. I'm talking from the perspective of someone who's on an IC of a middle school, and we have a budget that kind of comes and hits us, right? So that depending on how many kids are planned to be enrolled in that school, that's going to determine what kind of resources we can provide all the students. And we had to figure that out every year. So if you have 635, one year, and it goes down to, say, 603 the next, it means we lose staff or we lose teachers. And this is just sort of a stressful aspect of sort of reinventing the wheel. And, what it reminds me of really is the difference between something that ought to be an essential service like a fire department and an Amazon warehouse where people come and go because, volume's down, people are laid off. But I think it would be a great morale builder in the school if there was a way to make the impact of those changes just less abrupt. If maybe it could be like on a 2-year or a 3-year plan rather than every year having to possibly lose staff. Because we're talking about issues of retaining teachers. And it's a serious morale issue. And so I just wanted to bring that up because for us, at the middle school level, budgets come and just and hit us. And it would be nice if the principal were able to say to the teachers, yeah, you're on for the next 3 years. You can count on a job. So thank you.
So somebody mentioned an aha about there's a larger issue, something at the state level. I'm with you. I think we would all like to encourage our legislators to start looking at a minimum 2-year.
That's a legislative finance committee that's set up Am I correct on that, or is that not the case?
Do you know that?
I don't know if you're speaking about the SCG, the formula, is that what you are?
I don't know if I am.
Okay. No, that is not something that the state does. That's some of the methodology that we have at APS. And that's something definitely that we will share and make sure it's on our website to show where we do have by statute like class sizes that we have to adhere to. So there is exactly what you're talking about, the methodology of class sizes and how many students and teacher ratio. But one of the things that we're looking at is the standard school. And what I mean by the standard school is you have to have a certain amount for each school just to put the lights on. You have to have that basic standard school where you say, okay, to just put the lights on and open for business, we have to have a principal. We have to have a secretary. We have to have a custodian. We have to have, utilities. And all the schools should have that because we have to be able to open with that standard school. But when you look at that standard school across the district, it takes most of our SCG funding. So we only get a finite amount of budget. And with that finite amount of budget that we get, we have to be able to spread it out to all the schools. And like I said, just doing that standard school, that basic school, it takes a majority of our budget. So then we have to have that extra, the extra that all of you are talking about, and having that extra to be able to have meet the needs of the individual students. And those are the funds that we need. Like the board member said, that we have to go to Santa Fe and say, hey, Santa Fe, thank you. You gave us enough for the standard school, the basic school, but our students deserve more. Our students deserve this other extra so we can have these other programs. Thank you.
Okay. So this QR code that we have up here is meant for feedback. 2 types of feedback. Feedback on tonight and feedback, very specific feedback, like some of you have given about certain budgets you want to see. You want to see the allocations broken down. How are schools, how are they funded? You can use this QR code, or you can email boarded@aps.edu. Because here's what's important. We really do want this to be a 2-way communication. And every single one of you have very specific questions that are sometimes challenging to answer right now. So what we would like you to do is to either submit the feedback, stay afterwards and ask the questions of our budget team or of the board members, or email boarded@aps.edu so that we can get the answers to the questions that you have. So now we're to final thoughts. We hope that this discussion tonight was helpful and that all of you gained a little bit more insight into how the APS budget is built. Like we stated at the beginning, everything we do from the budget to instruction to the work of the superintendent must be focused on improving the student outcomes that you all said you wanted to improve, which again is literacy, math, post-secondary readiness, and the life skills ready upon graduation. And our promise, and we do promise, This is a brand new board and we are doing things differently. We promise that we will continue to listen to your input and we will provide opportunities to receive feedback as we all work together to improve the outcomes of our APS students. Do you want to do the second part?
This part? Sure. And I just want to stress, it's helpful to us to know what was helpful tonight and what was not. Please include that in your feedback. Tonight is not the only way to engage. You can contact us via email and or by filling out our surveys. And before you go, we have a few giveaways. Thank you to staff, custodians, AV, student groups, most of all families, staff, community members that are here tonight. On behalf of the Board of Education, thank you for attending our community conversation on the budget. Board members and budget staff will be here for a short time longer. I think we said that. I'm going to start pulling raffle tickets. And here we go. I have 691905. That winner left. How about 691882? Yeah. 691856. Uh-oh. 691873. Oh, hallelujah. We got a winner. It worked. I've got 692076. Tampoco. 691916. Oh, hallelujah. How many more? How many more? We got 3. Okay. 692069. Yay. And 692077. Yay, over here. Did we? Okay, one more. And it's 691913. Oh, good. We've got one of our students. Yay. All right. Well, thank you. And again, we'll be around for about half an hour. Thank you. Thank you. I want to talk to him. What do I do with this? I just toss them. Okay. I'll recycle. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Oh, I should have. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are wonderful. Your Sal will come along and fix it. Yeah. I had a Sal. All right, go forth and have questions asked. We're waiting for them to come. Hi, thank you so much.